I don't know what we can talk about in this nation without talking about white superiority, honestly.
Who defines the meaning of God also defines the relationship between economy and God.
African Americans spent $1.3 trillion last year, making us the 16th wealthiest nation in the world. Why have we not turned those riches into wealth to develop our community?
How does the ratio between the men and women influence, the new laws?
Sure. Yeah, well, in both the colonies of Maryland and Virginia, there was an incredible gender imbalance. There was about anywhere from 8 to 12 men for every woman in the colony.
Wow.
Yeah, and so women were a hot commodity, as you can imagine. And so another thing that we know is that if you can remember that gender imbalance, and then we had not an uncommon practice of men of African descent marrying English women, right? And the marriages were permitted, and we know that among the masses, among the 99%, they were accepted. There's not even a piece of anecdotal evidence that suggests otherwise, that those marriages were viewed in a negative way. But they were contested by the ruling elite, and they crafted this law in 1664, the lawmakers in Maryland did, that punished any English woman who married a, quote, enslaved Negro man. And the punishment was serious. She was enslaved for the duration of her husband's life, and any children that they have were enslaved.
Oh.
That law of 1664 was the precursor to a body of law that we call anti-miscegenation law. And anti-miscegenation laws were an invention of colonial North American lawmakers. They didn't come to us from England like most laws did. So that always tells us something about the needs and desires of those who wielded power. And anti-miscegenation law can be described as laws that made it illegal for white people to marry always persons of African descent, but sometimes various others. For example, California's anti-miscegenation law prohibited white people from marrying Mexicans, Native Americans, persons of African descent, Asians, and people from the Pacific Island.
But here in America, it was just Black folks.
Oh, no. Every anti-miscegenation law passed in North America, every one of them prohibited from marrying people of African descent. Some territories or states had anti-miscegenation laws that also prohibited white people from marrying various others, depending on the demographics.
I hate to say that they covered all their bases, but they covered all their bases.
Right. And you look at the function of anti-miscegenation law, right? Because here's where you see coverture and other means of control kind of converging, because anti-miscegenation law functioned to make white women exclusive to white men as a matter of law. But when you fold in enforcement practices, we find that rarely, even though lots of white men were in technical violation of anti-miscegenation law, rarely were they prosecuted. And so when they were prosecuted, this was the line crossed, that they dared to treat their non-white significant other in a way deemed only appropriate for a white woman in public. That's the line that could get them prosecuted. But so when we look at anti-miscegenation law, we can see that it functioned to make white women exclusive to white men, and make all women, when you fold in enforcement practices, it made all women available to white men. And it located patriarchal power exclusively among and within white men. And so white women then became this commodity, right? Yeah. White women became a commodity that could be used to help support this whole idea called white people, right? It was a trade for white men. Yeah, you buy into this white people thing, and here's one of the goodies that you get: exclusive access to white women. And if you don't want white women, well, we'll let you have that too.
Wow. Okay. Why is the struggle in obtaining strong relationships between African descent and whites in this country? Like why is there a struggle? I mean, in your opinion, what's like the biggest obstacle?
We live in the same moment, radically different lives, depending upon whether one is white or not white. Radically different lives. Right? Like when I think about my childhood and the stuff I learned, I had a little white doll. I was given Barbie dolls, right? That they represented this ideal beauty. I went to Catholic masses where Jesus was a white guy with blue eyes, right? And I had whiteness was affirmed everywhere I looked. And so I was given this heightened, excessive self-affirmation racially all over the place. And so you contrast that with different people of color who grew up in a similar context. And that's why we have colorism within lots of groups, where you have a privileging of being lighter skinned, and you know, there's the psychology of it is sad and harmful and terrible.
Yeah.
But that's why because look, I'm so honored to have to get to be a part of HAPI, and I never take for granted that my white self is a part of a distinctly African piece, you know, or community or whatever it is. Like I know that it's a real honor to be asked. And so, and I know that because I am shocked when a person of color extends kindness to me, because when I know the history that I know, it just seems like people should hate white people, non-white people. Yeah. You know, like the generosity of humanity on the part of people of color throughout this country's history is truly extraordinary.
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that keeps us going. You know, it's not in the makeup of who we are, you know, to be anything other than, you know, than generous and loving and all that good stuff. Yeah.
We have a lot to learn from you.
Yeah.